Monisha,
So I'm
share screen.
announce. So good evening and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I am Dr. Amit Borse and I'm a group product manager with IVA, a division of MCure Pharmaceuticals Limited. MCure is a pioneer in the field of gynecology and IVF. IVA is committed towards women healthcare, and we are programming 28 is a scientific theme for the year. Programming 28 is based on the concept of managing an ovarian cycle with different gonadotropins, analogs, and hormones as per different protocol. I'm very thankful to Dr. Rajshri Katke ma'am to accept our invitation and give her valuable time for the topic guidelines for managing COVID in pregnancy. I know ma'am does not require any introduction. Ma'am is a professor and HOD for Ops and Gynae Government uh,
Ra-
Grand Government Medical College, Mumbai. She has received many awards and appreciations. She has
जाओ दे
a
दे
lot of.
अमित हो गया जाने दे don't
Of course, ma'am. So thank you very much, ma'am. The session
let's
is
share screen.
all to you. I'll stop sharing my
Yes.
slides. Please,
Can
ma'am.
I start a share screen?
Please, ma'am. Please.
Yeah.
Slides are visible, ma'am. We can go
Yes.
ahead.
1 minute. I'll make it as a slide show. Yeah. Good evening to everyone, and thank you, Dr. Amit. Good evening to senior sir, Adi sir, Aspi sir, Kamas sir, madam, and all my dear friend colleagues. This is just a sharing out of experiences and nothing in that. Everybody knows all the things. So let's have a look of that first case of the COVID-19 pandemic in a December 31st, 2019 in a Wuhan. Then January 30, 2020, public health emergency of international concern. But March 11, 2020, COVID declared as a pandemic by the WHO. We all know about the etiopathogenesis. I don't want to go in a detail in that. It is a mRNA virus and incubation period. It is around 2 to 14 days. This I would like to highlight this slide about that. The maternal immune system is pro-inflammatory in the first trimester for the embryo implantation and the placentation. In the second trimester, it becomes anti-inflammatory in the second trimester for optimum fetal growth. And third trimester, it becomes pro-inflammatory again in the third trimester to prepare for the initiation of the parturition. And this is the important thing because we have to keep in mind how the pregnancy and the immune system is affecting in the COVID. So COVID-19 transmission, all we know is it's a droplet, then all this from the surface and the contact. Just for the sake of the slide, this is there. This is the one thing I would like to say that when I gave in 2020, I gave one presentation where I have written it like that with the ICMR. There is a probable thought of transmission of the vertical transmission, but at present there are only a handful of the reports of the vertical COVID-19. 6 babies had a positive test for a SARS-CoV-2, which has been given in a RCOG 24/7/2020. But we are now saying that emerging evidence now suggests that the vertical transmission is probable and confirmed. So neonatal infection was diagnosed in 4 cases within 48 hours of the birth by PCR test of the cord and the neonatal blood samples. So let's have how it has an effect of COVID-19 on pregnancy. What the WHO says, a pregnancy itself alters the body's immune system and responds to the viral infections in general, which can occasionally be related to more severe symptoms, and this will be the same for the COVID-19. So this we have to be understood in that a pregnant woman with suspected or the confirmed COVID-19 are less likely to experience a fever or the muscle pain. But if they develop severe disease, they are more likely to need intensive care than the non-pregnant women. This has been just declared a latest update of 12th March 2021 WHO. Risk groups we all know, specific comorbidities like obesity, hypertension, diabetes, asthma, HIV, chronic heart disease, immunocompromised states, blood disk crisis, those with solid organ transplants, and the malignancies. The pregnant women with COVID-19 who are having pre-existing medical condition, they are at a more risk. Then risks for the newborn babies and the women. 1 in 4 all babies born to the woman with COVID-19 were admitted in the neonatal unit, but data can causes of the preterm births or the indications for admissions to neonatal units among these babies is lacking, because we don't know how many babies they are coming with the COVID positive. There is not a much. Before this, in the morning only, I have attended one webinar with the UNICEF and all pediatric association, where they were saying they are getting collected the data for the newborn babies in a state of Maharashtra, but roughly they say there are 600 to 700 babies COVID positive states where they have collected the data. So how we should look with the statistic worldwide? Asymptomatic, 75 to 95% of the infected pregnancies, they go for asymptomatic cases. The CDC now includes pregnant women in its increased risk category. The higher rates than the non-pregnant ICU admissions. This is the CDC November 2020 statistic. But COVID-19 risk could be 70% higher in a pregnant woman. This has been declared by the CDC in 17 February 2021. Even now, WHO says pregnancy itself has its high risk concern. I would like to highlight one point in that. What ICMR defines interval for the COVID-19 reinfection to strengthen the surveillance. So 2 positive tests at an interval of 102 days with 1 interim negative test has been defined as a SARS-CoV reinfection. So 102 days, there has to be a span in that, and there should be 1 negative test. So reinfection, this is the one more concern nowadays. So I have included this slide in that. This is the worldwide study has been done with the how these pregnant women. The study sample was around 441. The neonates around 391, in which 21% had preterm labor, 9% had fetal loss, fetal distress, and 8% had premature rupture of womb membrane. The countries here were there. There United States, China, Iran, and from India, Australia, and the Canada. So that means the COVID is affecting nowadays with the in a COVID in a pregnant woman more also, and the mother to child transmission is definitely, it is showing in that. In a previous pandemic, in 1918, the influenza mortality was around 37%, and in a SARS COVID mortality, this says it is around 11%. So this is about the previous, but luckily we are not having so much of the COVID mortalities in a first wave more than the non-pregnant states. But what now Dr. Aspi sir told us just now also in that so many COVID mortalities are there. So we are with experience, we are agreeing now okay, this in a second wave COVID, it is hitting more to the pregnant women also. So effect on the fetus, increased incidence of preterm birth, stillbirth, preeclampsia-like syndrome. There is no evidence currently whether it is the virus is teratogenic or not. Then comes to, we should, as a general guidelines for the obstetric healthcare providers, so OBGYNs and other healthcare practitioners should notify immediately. This is what is happening. I was in a, we are conducting with the Ayush task force. I'm a member in that. There also we found is that many times the patients, they are going with the general practitioner, BMS, BHMS doctors, 6-7 days goes and suddenly patient deteriorates. So generally when the patients come, they have to notify, send it for the RT-PCR, and the registry also should be maintained. So these are the very important things, and this is how we want to get control over the COVID-19 in a society. So what are the do's and don'ts for the obstetrician? Women meeting criteria for the COVID testing should be tested. That is very important thing. Do not delay the management in order to test for the COVID-19. Suppose the patient comes with the previous cesarean section and she is in a labor, there is no COVID test, we cannot deny it. So that is the thing. Elective procedures like induction of labor, you have to individualize the case. Routine growth scans, unless for strict indication, and routine antenatal visits should be minimized. So specific obstetric management. So basically, For all pregnant women, you have to obtain the detailed travel history, history of exposure to the people with symptoms, if she has the symptoms of COVID-19, and whether she is coming from the hotspot area and whether she is a immunocompromised conditions. So information to be shared with the pregnant women, because this is out of experience also I'm telling you, many times the patient has been tested and the report is not there, patient becomes serious and the patients, they are coming to us and they don't know. When we talk to the doctor, then they says, "Arey madam, wo shayad positive thi." So by that time, if she comes, then either she gets deteriorated and all other healthcare workers and the doctors, they get infected with that. So share antenatal care during COVID-19. Women should be advised to attend the routine antenatal care, but with the it has to be tailored to the minimum visits. Like we have advised in that, like WHO also says 12 weeks, 28 weeks, and the 36 weeks of the gestation. Patients placement 1 meter apart in the waiting area. This all of us we knows in that. So in a first trimester, we should go for a screening of the medical disorders, the investigation, first dose of TT, NT scan. Then in a second trimester, go for a congenital anomaly scan. Then all the investigations in that. Third trimester, she can be encouraged for the daily fetal counts. Then her mental health is very, very important in that. Again, if she has any problems in a pregnancy, that has to be taken care of that. Then 30 to 34 weeks fetal well-being, growth scan, Doppler if it is required, and of course vaccine is about to come, but this is the WHO, so they have included in that. So this is how one you should go with the minimum visits, with the maximum things we can give it to the pregnant woman. Drugs during pregnancy recommendation. So the patient is on aspirin, no change in the recommendation. Those aspirin can be given as medically it is required. Magnesium for the seizure prophylaxis, it depends upon that. You have to individualize the case and then you can go ahead with that. Then comes to how to approach to the antenatal woman. Suppose she has all this, she has traveled, contact and everything. Do a clinical examination, RT-PCR in that. If suppose she is negative, monitor her in that. Suppose she becomes positive, then you have to treat in the hospital, or if she doesn't have any symptom, then she can be home isolated. The symptomatic, if suppose she has a 30 degrees centigrade fever with respiratory complaints are there, and if suppose she is a positive, then one should admit her. Don't do isolation at home for 14 days if suppose the patient is symptomatic, because we don't know how the course of the COVID it will go there, and they can miss something in the house. So they have to admit it, and then we can treat with the maternal surveillance and the fetal surveillance also. Then comes to the intensive care unit admission, where there is a SOFA score, we can say systolic blood pressure if less than 100 millimeter, respiratory rate more than 22, then a Glasgow Coma scale less than 15. Then you should go for a ICU admission, and you have to maintain the O2 saturation more than 94% of that, and we have to treat it accordingly, the COVID serious variety case. Then how to take a precautions to be taken. This is a JJ. This I have operated. She is a rare blood group, Bombay blood group patient, and we are not able to get anything. And in a COVID, she came with the 5.2 hemoglobin, where we are using all the things, shields. They are using the assistant, the staff nurses. I am using here a 3M mask because it was a full covered in that. So basically all team has to be in a PPE. Visibility a challenge, so we have to be very careful in that. Then amniotic fluid, blood spill should be avoided. So such cases you have to do with a calm mind. Whenever now I'm training to my students also, I always say don't go in a hurry, protect yourself and then you treat. Don't be in a hurry, not protecting, not using PPE, not using mask, and sometimes it gets spill it out, or any aerosol generates, then it becomes very difficult to get risky for us. So take precautions in that. Investigations, how should go ahead with that? Biochemical investigation, of course, CBC. look for lymphopenia, thrombocytopenia, neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, then LFT, RFT. This is all we know in that. But D dimer is very important in that because we are seeing many patients, they are coming with the D dimer. Yeah, even the obstetric causes can also rise in the, give the rise into the D dimer also. If it is required, go for a ferritin, procalcitonin, CRP levels, interleukins, troponin, and ABG in a severe cases. Now comes the questions, many times they ask whether to go for a HRCT or no. If suppose the patient is symptomatic, respiratory symptoms are there, shield the abdomen and then go. If they have a facility, they can go for a X-ray. If they have a facility, they can go for the CT scan, and it should go for the CORAD score. In a CORAD score, if suppose if you are having, if 4 to 5, okay, we can, mild, moderate, and very high CORAD score, then it has to be go with the ICU management in that. So how to manage of the patient with COVID-19 admitted to the critical care? So I have taken just the highlights in that. Women with the severe disease, how you should look it for that. If suppose she has a respiratory rate more than 30 minutes, hypoxia going to less than 90% saturation, pneumonia with 50% of the lung involvement. But before that also one should go for the intensive means intensive care. Not necessarily the patient should go for ICU, but if it is dropping down, keep everything ready in that. Titrate the oxygen and keep the saturation more than 94%. And we have to manage, of course, that will be managed by the in the CC only. But suppose now the patients, they are coming with us, see that more of them, they are with the COVID with the bacterial infection. So consider the bacterial infection if the white blood cell count is raised. There is a one patient who was COVID positive, and we have around 35,000 of the WBC. So it has to be, it is very difficult, to treat sepsis with the COVID. So they become very high risk in that. So this is in general, apply caution with IV fluid and all, higher antibiotics and all. How to go for an intrapartum care. This is the one important thing. I would like to share our experience, how we are going in that. We have two setups, one in a Grand Medical College, JJ, which is considered as a non-COVID, one Kama Hospital. It comes under us only, and that is we have made a COVID. In that, what happens, the patients, they are coming, we have made a transit ward in that. All these patients, they are admitted there, where we send the RT-PCR in that. And after that, RT-PCR comes, they go to the respected ward. Suppose it becomes positive, then we shift to either St. George's GT Hospital or the Kama Hospital. Now, the problem is that patients, they are coming in a labor. Patient, they are coming, suppose a footling presentation, breech presentation is there. Patient is asymptomatic, and we have sent the RT-PCR. Then first we used to decide we should go for an antigen. We used to do an antigen test, and the patient used to come negative. We used to treat them, and after 2 days, the report used to come RT-PCR positive. So we have decided all these emergency patients, treat like a COVID positive patient, take a precautions, wear a PPE, and then we can manage in that those with the intrapartum care. So this is regarding mode of delivery. This is a very important thing, mode of delivery. What WHO says, COVID itself is not an indication for cesarean section. But I have gone through the literature, and in one webinar I was talking on that, and there were international faculties from Egypt and all, and she said that they are doing 90 to 95% cases the cesarean section. I said, why you are doing it? So they said, no, patients, they are coming in a critical case and we are doing it. But I told them also, what we are doing is we are trying for a vaginal birth. Because of COVID, we are not taking for the cases for the COVID for the cesarean section. So mode of delivery should not be influenced by the presence of the COVID-19. Then comes to the what anesthesia, role of anesthesia. Epidural analgesia, it is recommended in the labor. But anesthesia and advice regarding the personal protection and the equipment with the cesarean birth. The most important thing is that the general anesthesia is a aerosol producing general anesthesia. So that time its use has to be restricted in that. We had one patient had around 100 of the fetal heart rate, and they were all panic, antigen was negative. We did a section on GA, and the aerosol was generated, and our anesthetist, the doctor has came positive. So I think we have to be very careful. We have to manage such cases. Think first, plan yourself, plan for protection, plan for anesthesia, and then you can go ahead. Within 2 to 3 minutes doesn't make any difference in that, but cool mind is very important nowadays. Seniors, they do have, but the youngsters sometimes in a mumbling, they can go ahead with the GA, or they can go ahead without PPA and all, and that is how the most of the professionals, they are getting affected with the COVID. So we have to take care of that in that. So this is the just a flow chart. In that, I have just covered all the points. In case of the deterioration in women's symptoms, you have to individualize the treatment, and the treatment has to be done according to the symptoms and whatever the availability of the drugs is there. General advice for the OBGYN gynecological theater: elective obstetric procedures should be minimized. Non-elective procedure should be in a second obstetric theater. So we have 2 theaters. I have done one theater for the COVID cases, and the other is for the non-COVID cases, but all staff and everybody is to be in a PPA kit. So this is about the antenatal, then the prenatal, then comes to the how the things they are there in the postnatal management. In that postnatal, it is unknown whether the newborns with the COVID, but nowadays the newborns, they are also coming positive, because in that in a cord blood, they have isolated the virus itself, the postnatal appointment. So this is the one thing, considerations below for the temporary separation. What happens after the delivery of the baby, whether they should be rooming in or keeping in that. Suppose they have a facility, you can keep the baby separate in that. But if facility is not available, then the baby should be 6 feet away from the mother, or some plastic physical barrier has to be there. So this is for the rooming in or the co-location and taking care of the babies. Then infants born to a pregnant individual with suspected COVID-19 for whom testing is unknown are not considered to be infants with the suspected COVID-19. Even we are suspecting the mother is like that, take a precautions like a controlling with like a physical barriers, putting a curtain or the plastic things, or keeping the newborn 6 feet away from the ill mother. And then if no other healthy, this is, it's okay. So what is the role of the breastfeeding? So breastfeeding, it's very important. Now I have just listened to the, we have gone through the literature, but listen, and we are also advising in that breastfeeding is very important. It carries the immunoglobulins. It is giving to the, it is boosting the immunity of the baby also. But the important thing is that how to breastfeed is that. Suppose COVID positive mother is there, she should be in a proper precautions, COVID appropriate behavior, sanitization of the hand, cleaning of the breast, and mask has to be there. But they should not put a mask on the baby. The mask has to be with the mother and all, and she can feed it. This is even the Academy of the Pediatrician is also, they are saying in that. But suppose if she doesn't want to take and feed, what is the option? If possible, there has to be a dedicated breast pump should be provided. Prior to expressing the breast milk, mother should practice the hand hygiene. So with that, they can take the mother's milk in that. And this express breast milk, remember, they have to give to the newborn by a healthy caregiver. So otherwise, the mother is giving the blood, the milk, and that milk, if somebody is giving to the baby who doesn't have a RT-PCR negative, then it becomes a very difficult situation in that. And second option in that, if suppose patient is admitted, their mother is very ill, then human milk banking, that is the another option in that. It has been not included here, but I'm telling this. This is the care of the newborn. Neonatologist in PPE, late cord clamping. There are two school of thoughts. One is the American says late. The other, the Royal College, they are saying the cord has to be cut immediately in that. And but these are things. Then hospital discharge. The discharge policies of the hospital. Well, what we are following is that when the patient is hospitalized, she becomes a COVID negative, then we can isolate her at home, and then she can be mixed up with the families. So now the most important thing is that what drugs should be used in the management of the COVID in pregnancy. So we are giving like azithromycin, doxycycline, we can't give in that. azithromycin, which is a bacteriostatic, then amoxicillin, ceftriaxone, depending upon that, interferon. This is not available. We are not giving in that. Definitely hydroxychloroquine. With means people have tried. There are papers they have come when first wave there was nothing. Then hydroxychloroquine was also being given in that. Then lopinavir and ritonavir in African studies. First they have said it will be very useful. Now most of the people they say it's not being so effective in some cases, and these are the category B drugs. So we have to explain to the patients these are, they have the limitation. There is not 100% treatment for the COVID. So we have to explain and go for the drugs now. Then the role of the corticosteroids, the analog of the steroid, then favipiravir, which is a RNA polymerase inhibitor. Remdesivir is a RNA polymerase inhibitor also, and tocilizumab is a monoclonal antibody. What is the role of plasmapheresis and the remdesivir? Remdesivir, definitely, if the patient is having a high CORAD score, patient has an immunotic patch in that, remdesivir, for the sake of the mother, you have to give in that, which decreases the viral replication in the host cells by blocking the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. But it is not approved in a pregnancy, but as the to save a mother's life, you can start with the 200 gram IV day 1, then followed by one dose daily for the 4 days. You have to monitor the liver function test, kidney function test, and all this thing. But remdesivir can be given in pregnancy. The benefits outweigh the potential risk, so you have to explain in that. NSAIDs, you can plain crocin that can be used in that. So what is the role of the steroids? The indication, those needing for the oxygen supplementation and the ventilatory support. There are the two school of thoughts. What they say is the first 4 days you should not go with the steroids. Why? Because when the viremia occurs and the viral infection, the host immunity has to be fight in that time. We are not supposed to suppress the immunity, and in that, so steroids started at a later stage, it is very beneficial, because if the patient progresses, then to hasten or to reduce the immune response, or we can say to reduce the cytokine storm, the steroids are very much useful in that. So recovery, then the protocol of the pregnancy recommends prednisolone 40 milligram orally once daily. But some people, they favor hydrocortisone 80 milligram intravenously twice daily. Recent guidelines for the Royal College of the Obstetrician and the Gynecologist suggest the use of intravenous hydrocortisone or the oral prednisolone in a pregnant or the breastfeeding woman in a dosage of 40 milligram or the hydrocortisone 80 milligram IV. What is the role of low molecular weight heparin? Definitely, if you look for the pathology of the COVID, so what it is causing alteration in the coagulation profile, microthrombi, and that is blocking at the alveolar response, inflammatory response, release of the cytokines, release of the ATPase, increase into the interleukins levels. So with that, to relieve this microthrombi, the heparin or the low molecular weight heparin is very, very, very important in that. And where we are using, people are giving it even in a mild this thing, mild cases of the mild cases of the COVID. There is one of my friend, she's a justice, and her daughter, she was pregnant, she was fully asymptomatic. They did the investigations in that, RT-PCR was positive, and the D-dimer was so high. Then even without symptoms, at the level of the higher D-dimer, we have started with the prophylactic and the therapeutic low molecular weight. So every case we have to individualize on the clinical symptoms, investigation, involvement of the lungs. Then it is a multi-team, multi-centric approach in a symptomatic cases. So always give a thought in that, where we can go for these enoxaparin 40 milligram OD prophylactically, and in a therapeutic dose 1 milligram per kg. This we are giving low molecular weight in even with the mild cases who has a D-dimer has gone at a higher level. So dose can be decided as per the D-dimer levels. If suppose less than 500 D-dimer nanogram is there, give for a 40 milligram OD, 500 to 3000 40 milligram BD, and 1 milligram per kg if it is more than 3000. But definitely we have to see the response, and we should go ahead with the dosage schedule according to that. The unfractioned heparin, the low molecular weight heparin, and the warfarin do not accumulate in the breast milk and do not induce an anticoagulant effect in the newborn. Therefore, they can be used by breastfeeding. So this is very important, and many patients we have seen they are having a deep vein thrombosis also after delivery in that. So low molecular weight heparin itself is a beneficial in a symptomatic patients with a even asymptomatic with the D-dimer levels having high levels. So if antithrombotic therapy is prescribed during pregnancy prior to a diagnosis of COVID-19, this therapy should be continued. You know, some people we are giving with for the recurrent pregnancy losses, then you should not stop it. It can be continued. It is the same even with the low dose aspirin, they can be continued with that. For pregnant patients hospitalized for the severe COVID-19, prophylactic dose of anticoagulation is recommended unless it is contraindicated. So contraindication of it is a general contraindication. The role of the vitamin D, zinc, and the vitamin C. What I have understood, I am at a background of the allopathy, and I am on the task force of the Ayush also. And what I have understood, one thing is that there is definitely a COVID. There is always whenever the infection is there. That is the one thing is that some people they are getting deteriorated, some people they are getting come out of that, some people are asymptomatic. There are two things in that. One is the individual's immunity, and the second is the virulence and the what is the strength of that. So basically, all these patients should develop or the boost the immunity. So we should give the vitamin D 60,000 international unit sachets, then the zinc and the vitamin C. It has a definitely a role. Patient also getting very benefited out of it, because many patients they used to say, I am having very feeling low, I am having lots of weakness. So routinely we are giving with the B complex, then vitamin C, vitamin D, and it is getting helpful in that. Zinc itself has even studies in that vitamin C and zinc combination of that, or if we give the patient, they definitely has a improvement in their general well-being, and it halts the process of the involvement also. This is the one important thing about the mental health, and this is very important. Isolation, bereavement, financial difficulties, insecurities, and inability to support the systems are widely recognized the risk factors for the mental ill. So patients, they are complaining with the feeling sad, negative thoughts, a lack of interest, not sleeping well, even when your baby is or sleeping too much, and loss of appetite. So it is the major concern now. Now the publications, they are coming with the mental health affecting in a COVID-19 in a pregnant woman and in general population, even with the healthcare workers. So WHO, ICMR, and FOXI also stress the need of a psychological support to a pregnant woman with COVID-19 due to increased risk of anxiety and the mental disorders in them, as reported in various studies. This is how the WHO has said in that. Psychological impact of the COVID-19, and among the Sri Lanka has done this study in that, and they have found in that many patients, they are having a lots of anxiety and depression there, and this is we have to take care of that. So in general things is that you have to keep disinfecting the fomite surfaces, avoid non-essential travel, avoid 7-1 gathering, I mean till the waves get settled. The ASHA workers and ANM have an important role in a scrutiny of the COVID antenatal women. I have seen some of the villages where there is no COVID patients, or there are some COVID patients, but they have treated well. The role is by the public health, ASHA workers and ANM workers. They are going, taking their temperatures, taking the swab, and if they are the patients are there, they are being isolated. So it is very important, tracing, testing, and treatment. The coronavirus epidemic increases the risk of this. We know all this, and this is the this is the one very important topic I would like to I have included in that. Vaccination in pregnancy. What are the benefits of the vaccination? Studies have shown that hospital admission and severe illness may be more common in pregnant, especially those in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, and the preterm births are more likely. So what happens to that? Pregnant women with underlying medical condition are at high risk of the severe illnesses. So Vaccination is going to help. This is what they say. Now, what are the side effects of the vaccine are common? This is in general, but the FIGO 2nd March 2029, the vaccine administration in a pregnant woman, the guideline is that this is currently no preference for the use of a particular COVID-19 vaccine, but COVID-19 vaccine series should be administered without any other vaccine with a minimum interval of 14 days. If suppose you are giving 2 vaccines, there has to be a gap of 14 days in that actually. What this says is that if you give a vaccine during pregnancy, they are getting a good immune response. So women planning the pregnancy can take the COVID-19 vaccines if they choose to go for the testing of pregnancy before COVID-19 vaccination. Vaccine administration for the breastfeeding women. Breastfeeding confers many health benefits to the mother and the newborn baby. So they gave yes or the nod for the vaccine during breastfeeding. But there is one important thing is that what Deha says, vaccine stimulated immunoglobulin A proved to pass through the breast milk. That means they says the baby is having, the neonate is having benefits out of it. Then the RCOG, does it matter what stage of pregnancy I am in and the vaccine should be? The vaccine should work whatever the stage of pregnancy you are in. This is the been said by the Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, has been advised by the Royal College of the Obstetrician. But I personally, what I feel is that the first trimester you should go the period of the organogenesis, and after that I think they should go. But generally we should plan to have the first dose at any time from 13 weeks onwards, and I also agree for that. Consideration of the people who are breast-free COVID, this we have this thing. What are the CDC recommends COVID-19 vaccine during pregnancy? This is a very wonderful study. A total of 35,691 V-safe participants. This is a paper even published in a New England Journal, and this is a UK study where they have taken 35,691. This is a sample size around 16 to 50 years of the age identified. What they have come to the conclusion, injection site only pain, headache, myalgia, and chills, fever. They are less frequently, they say, but these are the common symptoms. But among that, 3,958 participants enrolled in the VSAFE pregnancy registry. 827 had completed the pregnancy, in which 13.9% means 115 resulted into the pregnancy loss. That their observation. And 712, 86.1% resulted a live birth. Adverse neonatal outcomes, they are included in that. Preterm birth 9.4% and small for gestational age 3.2%. No neonatal deaths has been reported. So they says it should be taken. So this is a same vaccine study in that where they have a pregnancy loss in that around spontaneous abortion. Published incidence is around 10 to 20%. Then stillbirth was less than 1, preterm birth 8 to 15. So generally it is around 10 to 15%, and for the preterm labor it is around 15 to 20% of that they have found in their study. The complications with to whom they have given the vaccine. But congenital anomalies, they have documented 3, but they have not said whether it is because of the vaccine or because of the other things. So what are the updates in that? The SARS-CoV-2 RNA detected in the breast milk, Lancet 2020, and we have accepted in that. Social distancing is very important. Our guidelines and everywhere we say in that. American Gynecological Society study published 20 March 2021 is that COVID-19 mRNA vaccine generated robust humoral immunity in pregnant and lactating women in that. So vaccine-induced immune responses were significantly greater than the responses to the natural infection. That is their outlook of their study in that they have done in a Florida, South Florida, US study. So this is the Harvard Health Publishing, where they have promoted. They have done with the 2 groups in that. Actually, they have tested the vaccine of the Moderna and the Pfizer in that. and they have concluded is that you can go ahead with the vaccine, and specifically the morbid people and health workers. I think they should go for the vaccination after 13 weeks of that. In India, trial has not been done so much of that. We have Covishield and the Covaxin in that. Covaxin itself is an inactivated dead virus, mainly maybe quite safe also, but the trials has to come it. And what we would like to say that the data is so small in that, and the duration of the follow is not too much, so it is very early to say about its efficacy and the safety in that. The role of the tocilizumab is currently offered for the COVID-19 as a life, I mean, when the patient is very severe in that. Then Solidarity trial of 2020, where they have come with the these monoclonal antibodies. I would like to share experience of one of my friend. She is my classmate. She is at Texas, and she is the in charge of COVID center there. But they have used these monoclonal antibodies not on a pregnant women, but in general for other things they have used, and they got very good results in that. So these are the some of the trial drugs like Arbidol, Mycilate, and all these things. So this is regarding the COVID during pregnancy. I know it has become a very lot. I'll take only 5 minutes in that. So I have made about some data about the JJ in that. So basically JJ 31 to 35%, 48% cases we have found at age of 31 to 35. And most of them, they are from the urban and the suburban. And distribution according to the symptoms is that 98%, 99% they are having mild fever. Only 7% they have a dry cough, but unexplained diarrhea is the only one thing where even we should look for the test for the COVID things in that. And this we have found in a correlation as per the blood group also. So for 28% cases they have come with the A positive, then around O positive 19%, in a 5% in a RH negative, and AB positive we have around 19% of in that. So these are the comorbidities what we have observed in that. But basically fetal outcome, we have good outcome around 81% of the cases in that. Then in our experience, increased incidence of following were noted: first trimester, missed abortion, threatened abortion, blighted ovum; second trimester, we have preterm labor, PROM, abruptio placentae, fetal growth restriction; third trimester, fever, fetal distress, stillbirth, and failure of induction; postpartum, they went into a fever, sepsis, DIC, and postpartum hemorrhage and cervical tears. So worldwide maternal deaths, this is the brief review. It has been published in a journal in a Brazil, Iran, and Mexico. The total number of reported maternal deaths were 160, and they say is documented high income countries 138, in a middle income countries, and 124 from the Brazil. So basically there is a concern about the worldwide maternal deaths also in that. This is I think we have done. This is also done. So take home message is that there is nothing in our hand. So basically we have to do a hand sanitization, social distancing, wearing of the mask, double mask, and COVID appropriate behavior, a healthy balanced diet, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, and all these things only protect, I think, with the COVID. My references, they were from the WHO, then the Royal College RCOG guidelines, American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologist, ICMR, NIRRH, and CDC. And thank you very much for the patient hearing. I think I took a little bit more of the time, but I would like to end with this quote: in the middle of the every difficulty, we are in a crisis, but there is definitely lies an opportunity, and this opportunity we should grab it. And thank you very much for patient hearing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation. In fact, there is a message box flooded with a lot of comments. So I'll do one thing. I'll unmute everybody. Okay.
Stop sharing.
I have stopped sharing. I have stopped the
sharing. I have to. Acha, I have stopped. No, I don't know.
No problem. So I'm unmuting everybody so that anybody who wants, we can go one by one. Right now, everybody can actually unmute themselves. You can unmute themselves. So Anna Sai Birazdar sir has actually raised his hand. Sir, you can ask your questions by unmuting yourself.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am. Just I want to ask, ma'am, that whether the role of steroids, definitely there is a role of steroid, but what up to what limit? What is the maximum dosage that we can use? And the role of ivermectin in COVID patient?
Sir, one thing is that with the ivermectin, the safety wise, we don't know in that, but suppose they have a symptoms in that, but people are even they are using with the ivermectin also and favipiravir in the interest of the mother. If suppose she is symptomatic, we cannot rush directly to the remdesivir in that. We have first line, if suppose she is asymptomatic or if you feel a very mild symptomatic, then we can go ahead with the all these things, observation, isolation, vitamins and everything in that. But the thing is that some of the mild symptoms, they are going into the suddenly with the pneumonatic patches and all that. So to halt that, before the remdesivir is there in our hand is the one is ivermectin and second is a favipiravir. With ivermectin, there is the studies they says the ivermectin it may help, it may not help, but the studies with the favipiravir, there are the results they can say that we can try for with the mild cases, though they are not safe in a pregnancy. They are the category B drugs. But suppose the patient is symptomatic in a mother's concern, then you have to go ahead with that. But some people, they are going with the hydroxychloroquine also in that. So
what is the dose of ivermectin?
In that, in many cases with the mild sore throat, fever and all, patients are coming with the azithromycin also, with the vitamin C and everything. But some patients, those who skip suddenly to the higher thing, then we have to think other drugs for the safety of the mother.
Yes. Dr. Reena Vani ma'am has one question.
Rajeshri, thank you for that excellent presentation. I would just like to add to what Dr. Rajeshri has just said.
Yes.
Ivermectin dose is 12 milligram given for 5 days, but some people are using it for longer. Let us be very clear, it is not a recommended drug in pregnancy. It should, and in first trimester, definitely the use is avoided. As madam has also specifically said, we would prefer to give FabiFlu before we go to ivermectin. Again, FabiFlu also does not have enough data. That is a better drug. In fact, if you look at the Maharashtra Task Force recommendation, and in our own hospital, we have evolved in the last 1 year. It's more than a year since we're dealing now. We've dealt with more than 600 COVID positive pregnant patients. We are not using hydroxychloroquine anymore. We have stopped using oseltamivir and also ivermectin, which we were using earlier, even in pregnant women. Now, as madam rightly mentioned, remdesivir is the one which with selected cases we have to use. And one thing I can't resist saying at this point, people are misusing steroids sometimes too early in the stage of viral replication. So I would urge everyone, be very judicious on when steroid has to be started. That is something which will determine the outcome.
Steroid has to be started after, day 5, because first 3-4 days, their immunity has to fight with the disease. If in that cases, if we give the immunosuppression with the steroids, then they says that the course of the disease is more advanced in that. So this is how every day it is coming up, and I fully agree with that also, because the role of the immunosuppression is to prevent the cytokine storm, to prevent the most of the involvement of the immunity which is acting against to their body cells, and that storm has to be halted by the prednisolone. And what that sir is asking us, how much you should give. So but steroids has to be given individualized case, and they have to taper, and that depends upon the dose of the D-dimer, interleukins and everything. I will say one example. My lecturer, she was on steroid, and she took steroids and all those things, and she has suddenly developed a bradycardia, and they says it could be a steroid, so they have started tapering it. So there is no rule of thumb that it should go like that. Vaguely you can say that till the inflammatory markers comes down, and you protect with the immunosuppression with the steroids, but tapering and taking it out depends upon the clinical condition and the biochemical variation of that, and also with the involvement of lung.
Can I just add to what Dr. Rajeshri said about the dose of steroids? One thing is high dose oral steroids, as Madam mentioned, you do not start before the 5th day, or if there is the documented hypoxia in pregnancy.
Yes.
Another thing is that the ICMR and the Maharashtra Task Force guidelines have said now inhale 2 puffs of budesonide, which is available at home with most people who have asthma. On home-based treatment, if you're doing that for pregnant women, that is something you should start first. And in the choice of steroids, oral steroids, 4 or 8 milligrams of dexamethasone or 40 milligrams of methylprednisolone in moderate or severe cases only can be started, but usually not in the home-based setting. And with a cover, here is where antibiotic cover has to be given. Here, azithromycin is the drug which is used most widely in non-pregnant women, doxycycline. But if you don't have any other option, doxy can be used with little bit of due risk. And if it has been given, it's not an indication for termination. But these are the 2 antibiotics which are recommended by the task force to cover when you're giving steroids. Thank you.
Generally, Reena, I'll tell you, in that task force, generally the guidelines from the gynecologists, because in the first wave some of the guidelines they asked from the DMAR for the main task force of allopathy. There I have prepared and then I have gave it to them. That also in that. So basically the thing is that one start with the azithromycin in that. Doxy I won't recommend in that actually, because doxy is not pregnant first trimester. I don't want that also in the going doxy in that. But azithromycin definitely, steam inhalation, saline or haldi gargles, and the boosting of the immunity. But suppose we start with the mild symptoms in that. Here I would like to say that rather than the ivermectin, we should go for the favipiravir, because there are a couple of the cases where I have seen that where they have started with the ivermectin and it has not responded, D-dimer has gone up. Then in some cases it has gone to the level of the remdesivir. In some cases they could start with the favipiravir, but the action of the ivermectin and the favipiravir, it helps only if you start into the initial phases. And the remdesivir, when you start at the level of the 6th or 5th or 7th day in that. And suppose if the patient is in a severe condition like lung involvement, hypoxia is there, then you can start everything at the interest of the mother.
Rajeshri.
Yes,
Rajeshri.
Yes.
Very nice lecture, very vibrant. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah, yes, madam, very clearly.
Very, very vibrant lecture. One, I had some doubts about ivermectin that has already been cleared. Only thing is there was a mention that vaginal deliveries have an increased incidence of fetal transmission. Can you explain that in one of your slides?
I'll explain to that, because I'll tell you what WHO says is that, and what are the studies in that, COVID-19 itself is not an indication for the this thing. Mode of delivery, whether to do a cesarean section and all those things. But there are some studies, they are in some countries. See, one day I was giving same webinar lecture in that, and there are foreign delegates in that also. There they said, some people they said we have gone through the vaginal delivery route, but some people they says we have done a more than 90% of the cases with the cesarean sections. But their thing is that they are saying their more cases they are coming with the moderate to severe variety of that, and they are doing just to deliver the patients like that. But in my opinion, I feel vaginal delivery, if she is delivering, you should go. We are delivering the patient vaginally. We have not found anything like that in that. But definitely with the cord blood, they have demonstrated the viruses. It could be an intrauterine also, and it could be, suppose even with the vaginal secretion or even with the cord blood is there, the baby can be infected in that, in the intrauterine also. So mode of the delivery should not be influenced by the COVID-19. That is what the dictum by the ICMR also, WHO also, and CDC also. We are happy with the doing vaginal deliveries, and whenever it is indicated, going for that in that also cesarean section.
See, during delivery, normal delivery, what happens, it is very difficult to control the movement of the patient because of the severe pain what she gets. She keeps on moving around, she keeps on jumping around, she keeps on shouting around, and it's going to be very, very difficult. Then once the baby comes out, then the splash of the amniotic fluid and all the blood and all, which is also very difficult to control. And that is why probably they say that the normal vaginal delivery may be little more riskier than doing a cesarean section. I personally feel that if you give a small dose of epidural at the time of vaginal delivery, anticipated, or if you have planned a vaginal delivery, a small dose of epidural anesthesia where the patient can remain comfortable. What they describe it as a walking epidural anesthesia, where the patient is also comfortable. She is not shouting and howling or doing anything, because that is going to be more detrimental to the other staff who is all around. And obviously, everybody is not going to be in PPE and also in a normal delivery patient. So I think that is why probably the WHO must have said what is mentioned by Dr.
What about may I say something? What about the neonatal treatment?
Neonatal treatment does not even if the patient has got a cesarean or normal delivery, normally it is the same. The treatment for neonate is going to be the same. You know, the presence of neonatologist in the theater will be there, even in a labor room will be there, and the treatment given to the baby is absolutely same. It does not make any difference whatsoever. Of course, unless there is some problem with the baby.
Dr. Urvashi Yavalkar ma'am also has some query. Ma'am, if you can go ahead.
Yes. Am I unmuted?
Yes,
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear? Yeah. So I have a 34 weeks pregnancy who has just got exposure through a relative. So if the RT-PCR is sent, if it is positive at this stage, what should I be doing?
RT-PCR is positive, that patient?
It's awaited, but immediate relative is positive. So
Madam, if suppose she is asymptomatic, then and RT-PCR comes positive, then we can isolate her. But I think for 34 weeks, it should not be at a home, but she can be hospitalized at the COVID center.
Right.
And
yes, so all the basic tests should be carried out, like D-dimer, ferritin, etc. for her.
No, I think now
Not
if there are no
necessary,
symptoms, don't do that. But as a protocol, if you want to, if she develops some fever, we have to do for the D-dimer, ferritin levels.
Okay, thank you so much.
May I add something? May I add something, Rajeshwari Tai?
Yes, sir. You need.
I think if this patient shows even the earliest of symptoms, don't miss the chance to give favipiravir. See, it is the delay. It is the delay in the initiation of favipiravir that leads to severity, and that leads to remdesivir. If you want to prevent remdesivir, start favipiravir with the onset of symptoms. Await the RT-PCR. If the RT-PCR is negative, you may abort this favipiravir. But if it is positive, you are well on track. You are given in advance, and I'm sure the patient will not enter the critical phase, and remdesivir, tocilizumab, all will be prevented.
Thank you so much.
One important thing is that here, when the patient comes to us, catching the point is very important, and remaining alert is very important. What's happening, you know, we will say, no, we will wait, ivermectin.
No.
Ivermectin,
forget ivermectin.
Doesn't work much of that. Then
you have to give Rajeshwari Tai, you have to give a specific antiviral, and there are only two specific antivirals, favipiravir and remdesivir. Favipiravir, the advantage is oral and you can start immediately. And 2,500-3,000 रुपयाचा आहे, काय खूप costly नाही आहे. Start करा ते.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
This particular patient which the Urvashi madam said, I think she has come into contact with a very close relative who is with her, and she is positive. Now, if she has got a proper facilities available in the house for Who is that?
Can't hear.
Or what is it? Or
I have muted them, sir. Please go ahead.
So if she has got a proper facility for an isolation in the house and she is asymptomatic and is registered in a nearby hospital where at the spur of the moment she can reach the hospital, I think she can be observed at home and isolated. And as Dr. Kamath said, that earlier you can start the FebiFlu, the better it is. Instead of just waiting for a
one important thing I would like to say in that is sometimes at a 34 weeks also, patient, they are coming with the unexplained preterm rupture of membrane. Then that time for a COVID patient, hunting for the hospital becomes again a
That is
problem.
what exactly I said.
Ah.
That if that she
So,
registered next
that
door
is
somewhere,
also
for
very
example,
important.
and in a good setup she is registered, she can immediately walk in 5-10 minutes to the hospital.
Yes, yes. But
That's
sir,
what
what
we
it
do.
happens, once the COVID positive comes now, in a private hospital, they don't take.
Naturally.
Then the patient has
Yeah.
to hunt for the hospital. That is also one of the.
That is a problem. That is a
But
problem.
if she goes there and she turns out to be positive, then they are not going to send her back. Okay, you are positive, so now go out.
Yes. So she can be observed and isolated and start with the treatment.
Yes, thank you so much for your input.
Madam, you had a fantastic presence, huh? Very good.
No, sir.
And I think you are
Rajeshri, I have still one difficulty now.
Sir.
I have one difficulty. Are
Yes,
we
sir.
going to give Covishield? They are not available, first of all. But if and when the availability is free, are we or are we not going to give Covishield or Covaxin to pregnant patients? And if we are going to give,
worldwide with the UK, USA, they have started with the.
that is mRNA. That is
Pfizer.
mRNA.
India is not has come up with the guidelines of that.
So I think we should hold on.
No, but actually, AstraZeneca has already done a third stage trial in UK.
And because we don't know.
As well as pregnant patient. The Covishield comes from AstraZeneca.
The health
And
of the
trial has already been done there.
when they become young.
So what are you saying, Rajeshri Tai? Do we give vaccine or do we not give?
No, sir. They should get, if they want to get vaccinated, it should be like they should wait. Even they can go take it after delivery. Also.
I think the only people should be healthcare workers, ladies who are pregnant, who should be given.
That should be given in that.
Yes. The others, I think we should hold on. Others, I think we should hold on.
And I feel Covaxin will be better than the Covishield because Covaxin is generally it is a dead inactivated, so it will be little safe in a pregnancy.
Oh, I see. And now another question, my last question. We are very fluent with giving Vaxiflu, the flu shots. So we are giving that at 24 weeks. Now, if we are thinking of Covaxin, do we or do we not give this flu shot?
Sir, they said that in between there is a rule of all vaccination. In 2 vaccinations, there has to be a distance of 14 days.
I'm not saying about that. Do we give these 2 vaccines, or since we are giving Covaxin, we don't give the flu shot to that patient?
No, I mean 2 mixer cocktail vaccine. You mean?
No, I'm not saying cocktail. 2 given 15 days apart. Do we give both of them, or since now we are giving Covaxin, we avoid giving the flu shot?
Yeah, I'm not getting what you said, sir.
See, we are giving flu shot to every patient.
Yes.
Till now.
Okay.
So now do we stop that?
No, I understood that. That is also, they say ki there has to be a, you can give influenza vaccination and this also.
Acha, the COVID vaccine.
On the contrary, they have advised in USA that you should go for influenza vaccine.
Yes.
Because
I think so.
Vaccination you should not stop. Because the other viruses, it will attack more on that.
Yes. And
in India, we don't
and in my humble opinion, I think there is some cross immunity with the against COVID when you give the flu shot. All said and done, they are respiratory viruses.
You are right.
Yes. Because it says this is a innate herd immunity. Innate herd immunity. Like people used to get a oral polio vaccine and measles vaccines also. So that vaccine itself has its own immunity against the viruses.
Correct.
And that gives the benefit of doubt to some part of this. But it is not specific vaccines. And they have said like that also. They denied the specific immunity towards the COVID, but definitely the innate immunity will be there in the body.
So I think the take-home message should be: don't stop giving flu shots.
Yes,
right.
I have made a slide also in that because I tried to cover most of the points in that. So,
anyway.
Yes, in that.
Thank you, Rajeshri ताई. Very nice.
Thank you very much.
छान वाटलं ऐकून आणि खूप
बोर झालं नाही ना आसपी सर?
खूप छान
बोर नाही होणार?
Very nice.
हो बरं वाटलं. प्रॅक्टिकल, एकदम प्रॅक्टिकल.
Because working in that na, so सर आप भी ऐड कर
No
दीजिए
wonder
ना,
your references to expert also.
SP सर आप भी ऐड कर दीजिए. Anybody they can share the experiences, their COVID and all.
Dr. Beena ma'am wants to say something. Ma'am, please unmute yourself and you can speak. Dr. Beena ma'am. Please ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, can we give Bharglov injection in pregnancy in a COVID patient? Every COVID patient.
Which injection?
Bharglov, ma'am.
Antiglobulin. That is antiglobulin.
Yeah, sir. Can we give prophylactically? Because we are giving in recurrent pregnancy losses.
That I
can
told
we
not
give
that
in-
they are continuing. We have to continue whatever you are giving into your pre-operative, pre-pregnant, early pregnancy. You can continue that actually.
No, ma'am.
Steroid,
Every
low
patient.
aspirin, low molecular weight heparin. You have to continue this.
Ma'am, is there any role of Bharglov injection in COVID patient? Immunoglobulin.
If it is indicated, it has to be given.
Immunoglobulin,
There is no
they
contraindication.
have tried in a very severe cases, you know. So, but generally the immunoglobulins, they are not trying for this thing. Even the trial of the monoclonal antibodies also, it has not been tested in a pregnant patient. This I can say that because in a USA the trial was carried out for this, and one of my friend classmates, she also doing on this. So I have talked to her long 15 days back. So she has told me everything in detail, how they do with the monoclonal antibodies and all these things.
I think giving flu vaccine is a better option than giving Bharglov.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Vaccination
Ma'am,
is always better in that.
what is the dose of Betnisol in a preterm COVID positive patient?
You can give it a COVID positive patient if suppose she has a symptoms, more severity of that. The prednisolone you can start with the 40 milligram. But other people, they says ki IV, if she is very serious, then some people they are giving with the IV hydrocortisone also. So prednisolone and hydrocortisone, they are preferred than the betamethasone. Trials,
Okay.
people, I mean.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Nice lecture, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, there are certain questions in the chat box.
अभी चार्ट में आप ही रीड करो ना सर.
Yes.
मैं सर कामा सर सब जन आंसर कर देंगे.
Yeah. There is somebody who wants to speak. Prajakta ma'am, please go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, ma'am. It was a very nice lecture. I have in today's OPD, I had a patient who came with 8 weeks pregnancy, and she didn't know that she was pregnant, and unknowingly she took vaccine 15 days back. That means at 6 weeks of pregnancy, she took the vaccine.
कुछ नहीं होता मैडम. Tell her to continue the things. Do good sonography. Nothing will be there. Which vaccine she has taken?
Covishield.
Covishield. ठीक है. Nothing to
So
worry.
can she continue pregnancy? Hello.
हाँ मैडम. Nothing to worry for her.
Can she continue?
Yes.
But, okay. Thank you.
Okay. But anyway, if you give Covishield also, the immunity and immune responses, they start with the after 2 doses. After that also for more than 15 days. So we should not get panicked too much in that. Barobar, sir?
Immunity itself will start after 3 weeks, na?
Yes.
Immunity itself will start after 3 weeks.
Yes.
So she must be in the second trimester by then.
By that time.
Yes.
But tell her that though she has taken the vaccination, she has to wear a mask and hand sanitization. Now, so they says, everything has come once vaccine is being taken.
No, only thing is we don't know about any long-term effects of the vaccination, which is taken at 6 weeks of pregnancy.
But madam,
so she is anxious about it.
No, but I'll tell you one is that this is mRNA vaccine, okay, mimic like a COVID vaccine. But there are cases where the patient is pregnant and they have been diagnosed as a COVID.
Yeah.
So
yes, that is true.
I mean, with COVID, we are having good results in that with the neonatal and the maternal outcome. I don't think she should have any problem.
Getting a mild COVID infection is like taking 1 shot of COVID vaccine.
COVID vaccine. That is how the immunity gets.
Herd immunity is going to come. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Amit, any questions in the chat box you can ask.
Yes, ma'am, the question is by Dr. Jaya Rai. She's saying, can we give Fabiflu in first trimester?
First trimester, which I mean, at what weeks basically?
Only that much has been mentioned. Dr. Jaya Rai, if you are online, you can elaborate.
Okay. First trimester, if suppose she is in a period of organogenesis, like 7 weeks to 13 weeks, you try to avoid if she is asymptomatic. But suppose if she becomes very much symptomatic in that, then you have to think of giving the drugs for treating the.
Ma'am, she is 10 weeks pregnant and she has only sore throat. Baki blood investigations are normal. D-dimer, ferritin, everything, C protein, everything is normal. I've already
Azithromycin.
Azithromycin I have given, and vitamin C, D, zinc that we have started.
And saline gargles.
Betadine gargle I have started.
Betadine nahi.
Betadine dena nahi.
Namak, yes, correct.
Saline or haldi ka gargle.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Ma'am, apart from that, she is regularly monitoring her oxygen level, so we don't have to do anything else apart from this?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you.
Why not betadine gargles, madam?
Betadine, there are two things. One is the betadine, it's not very specificity. Even for the scrub, we are not doing with the betadine. This virus itself has a isopropyl alcohol 95%. In that, it gets killed in that. And second thing is that with the betadine, in a pregnant state, they get that test, and many people, they get to omit it out,
Okay.
Bacterial infection, I will prefer to go for betadine gargle.
Okay.
Hello. In fact, some people advocate that you just apply a little betadine every 4 hourly or 6 hourly in the nostril to prevent the virus from growing.
Hello, Dr. Kartke.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question? I already sent in the chat box. I wanted to know is there any input regarding the clamping of the cord in cases of mild and severe?
No, madam, I think there are, see, it is very early to say. Some people, they say early cord clamping, some say late cord clamping. What I feel is that you should clamp as far as the baby comes out.
Okay, it's a routine clamping till now, till we get further. Okay.
Madam, what about blood thinners, Ecosprin and low molecular weight heparin?
Yes, madam, there is a definite role of low molecular weight. If suppose patient is having a symptoms, patient has developed the pneumonic patches, and patient is asymptomatic, but patient has a D-dimer level has been raised. In those cases, low molecular weight heparin, we should go for that.
And not only that, I think Rajesh Sai, after your low molecular dextran, you please continue with Ecosprin.
Yes, Ecosprin post.
Should continue, yes, after that.
Because the placental thrombin, microthrombi at the placental levels, it will be take care of that. And one more thing I would like to say here, because we are in a referral center, many patients, they are coming with the sagittal sinus venous thrombosis. One patient yesterday died. She became COVID positive, but the only thing is that she has refractory hypertension, not controlling to anything. I said, you do her COVID. She was asymptomatic. मैंने बोला उसको कुछ मत करो, उसको कोविड करो. COVID came positive. Only she was a case of PIA, preeclampsia, and not responding to labetalol, not responding to anything. I said उसको एक बार COVID कर लो. We did the COVID. She became COVID positive. After admission, we transferred to St. Joseph's and she died. So we don't know actually this multi-organ, this COVID, how it is acting. Then there are second wave, we have a double mutation. The mutant genes, they are very different, First we thought it will not be more virulent, but now we are seeing very unexplained deaths. So what works and what we don't know.
Ma'am, there are last two questions I can take. That vitamin D high dose in COVID, apart from normal daily recommended dose, is going to harm. Please specify.
60,000 international units, give once in a week, give for 3-4 weeks. Because there are studies where they say
in fact, there was In fact, there was a news from USA quite some time back, even in the mid last time, that there is a hammer dose of vitamin D, which they said is 60,000. Whether pregnant or non-pregnant, I'm not talking about it.
Yes, yes.
Vitamin D's role in prevention or control of the virus.
Very high.
60,000 international unit per day for 3 consecutive days, followed by 60,000 every 15 days. And that for how many days, it was not said. And
Then we have to go for a vitamin D levels, and you see whether there is a hypervitaminosis.
because for the sake of one Dr. Merchant, if you remember, he was the Dean of Sion Hospital. He also has written there 6 lakhs of ampule. You can break it and give orally. You understand? And then you continue for every once in a month for about 6 to 8 months. Continue like that.
That is 6 lakhs, Aspi, no?
6 lakhs.
6 lakhs, not 60,000.
But that 6 lakhs which we give intramuscularly, they say its bioavailability is not much.
No, you break the ampule and give it orally.
Orally.
You break the ampule and give it, and this can be given as a mass the thing in Jhoppadpattis and the hotspot areas and all.
Yes,
Because
they are
the ampule costs hardly about 50 rupees. So it is economically also quite viable also.
But generally we advise that 60,000 for 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 days.
60,000 once a week, but these Americans have advised 60,000 one, second, and third, 3 consecutive days, followed by 60,000 every 2 weeks.
Vitamin D has a very high profile of safety. So even if you give very high doses, don't worry. Hypervitaminosis is not that common.
We are all deficient of vitamin D.
Exactly. आपण 20 च्या खालीच असणार सगळे.
खाली 20 च्या खाली आहे. मी केलं होतं माझं 20 च्या खाली होतं.
Thank you very much, Rajashri madam. It was a wonderful.
Hypervitaminosis is very much common. Sir, Manzar here.
Yes, hi Manzar.
Ma'am, beautiful lecture, very crisp. You really guided us well. And I had discussed my patients with you. Both my patients have gone home today.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to add about this hypervitaminosis. My husband is endocrinologist and it is very common. And it generally doesn't come from obstetrician. It comes from orthopedicians who give lot of vitamin D without monitoring.
Right. It is the orthopedicians.
So many of them, the hypervitaminosis, it occurs.
मॅडम त्यांचे डोस 6 लाख असतात. आपण 60,000चं बोलतोय.
पण आपल्याकडे
नाही आपण बरोबर देतो.
We
are better pharmacologists than orthopedicians.
Yes.
धन्यवाद मॅडम, खूप छान वाटलं.
धन्यवाद.
आनंद झाला.
थँक यू.
इंटरॅक्शन मध्ये खूप मजा आली.
मजा आली. इंटरॅक्शनच पाहिजे असतं खरं तर.
होय ना.
Thank you very much for organizing such wonderful program. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you.
And madam, you also for sparing your valuable time. You know, I know you are so busy.
And so many points has been answered by sir and all, and very good interactive. Acha recording karo so that we will again refer it.
Yes, of course, ma'am. I'm recording it till the last minute, and I'm sharing this recording tomorrow morning with all of you.
For other people, those who want to know, so many inputs from experienced people, na.
Absolutely.
And thanks to Amit for making it so technologically nice. And thanks to MK also.
Amit ne day before yesterday he sent the link. I was not knowing. He said once last week 29 पे रखेंगे. After that इसका message ही नहीं. Then I suddenly saw that there is a link. I said, "अरे बाप रे, देना है."
Because Amit knows it very well. Adam is ever ready, you know, at the spur of the moment, you know.
Ready time.
खूप छान झालं लेक्चर मॅडम. Absolutely खूप informative आहे.
Have a great time and wish for a speedy recovery for everybody.
Please stay happy.
Look after yourself.
God bless us all. God bless us.
Yes.
I
pray God all of us will go through this COVID.
त्याच्यातून जिवंत निघूया, मग खूप करता येतील आपल्याला सेमिनार्स. होय.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. So with all your permission, may I now close the session?
We will end.
Yes. Thank you very much, Amit.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.